Why, hello there, everyone. Braum earlier today got revealed for 2XKO, the upcoming League of Legends fighting game, and this is definitely the character that I am most excited about so far. Because of all the characters revealed so far, even though I have played all of them at least once in League of Legends, this character, Braum, is the first character in the 2XKO roster that I actually regularly play in League of Legends. He's the only character so far that is part of my regular champion rotation pool, because I main support and top lane, and even though Bard is my go-to character, my go-to champion for the support role, I will regularly pick Braum instead in the cases in which my team needs a tank, or if I am laning with an ADC who's able to proc Braum's passive really well, such as Jinx, for example. And another reason why I have a particular connection to this character specifically is because when I first started playing League of Legends, they don't do this anymore for some reason, and I have no idea why, but they just suddenly stopped doing this, and I really miss it. But when I first started playing League of Legends, whatever the newest character was at the time, they would have that be the login screen. You would see the new character's splash art somewhat animated as the login screen, and it would have its own music to accompany the key art as well. And when I first started playing League of Legends, Braum was the newest character at the time. So every time I would log into the game, I would see Braum and hear his music. And this was when I was initially getting hooked on the game, and it was when everything in the game was super novel to me, right? So out of all the characters in the game, I would say Braum is probably the character that is the most imprinted on my brain. So it feels weird to say I have nostalgia for a game that I consider to be super modern like League of Legends, right? But I actually checked the reveal trailer just to reminisce about him before booting up the 2XKO trailer, and I saw that it was uploaded 10 years ago. So I guess with it being 10 years old, I'm allowed to say I have nostalgia for it. But let's see how they adapted him into this game. I think it's a little surprising that he's in the game, just because he's a support character, and not only is he a support, but his whole shtick is shielding his teammates, right? Peeling for his ADC, shielding his laning partner and his teammates with the shield. So if you were to put him in a fighting game, he wouldn't really be shielding his teammates because you're not team fighting, right? He would just be protecting himself, and he would be punching the opponent and whatnot. So I'm really curious to see how they adapted that into a moveset. The one thing that I can think of that they might have drawn inspiration from is Tsurugi from Under Night. Kind of a newer character, because Tsurugi was a new character with the new version of Under Night that only recently came out. But I'd be surprised if we didn't spot some similarities, because Tsurugi is the only shield character that I can think of in any kind of fighting game in which he actually uses the shield as a wall, right? I'm not thinking of Captain America, because Captain America in Marvel vs. Capcom pretty much just uses the shield like a boomerang, and his Charging Star special, you know, it does go through projectiles, but it's basically a tackle. Whereas Tsurugi from Under Night, he's literally able to plant the shield down, and it is a wall. So I'm expecting to see at least some guard points here like that, because why would you be a shield character without guard points? I know Braum was in the League of Legends RPG, which I recommend, by the way. Somehow that game kind of went under the radar, even though it has the League of Legends name attached to it. But Braum is in that game, and of course, that's one way in which he was adapted, not being, you know, a support character. But with it being a turn-based RPG, it's still party-based, so he's still able to give support abilities to his teammates. But again, I'm really curious how he's going to play in a game in which it's just him versus an opponent. I do like the redesign here, a very subtle redesign. I wouldn't even really go so far as to call it a redesign. It's more so that he's just in the 2XKO art style. Of course, with League of Legends and even the League of Legends RPG, the character models are much smaller, so you would want to have certain things a lot more readable. And with it being a fighting game, the character models are taking up much more of the screen space, so you can afford to have some things be smaller. For example, the belt. If I remember correctly, the belt goes up much higher in League of Legends because it needs to be readable from far away, but being able to see him this up close and personal, the belt doesn't need to be that big at all, right? Because this definitely looks big enough. Also, I think he has less armor because he doesn't have the gauntlet on his left arm here. So It's a little weird in one sense that he has less armor with him being a tank, but with it being a fighting game, I think it's justified to remove some of that armor because you want to see more of the anatomy, right? Because if he had the gauntlet on his left hand, you wouldn't be able to see his hand as well. And in a fighting game, you know, with punching and kicking, you want to be able to see the hands and the feet much more clearly. So I would say this is a pretty good redesign, even though I don't really consider it a redesign. It's a pretty good adaptation, I should say, of putting him into the art style. Okay, I know that was a bit longer of an intro than what people would maybe normally expect. But again, I have a personal connection to this character, so I definitely wanted to preface it with all of that. And also just, you know, to talk about my impression of the design. I saw the concept art already, but I haven't watched any of the footage. In fact, I saw the concept art posted before I knew anything about the reveal trailer being posted, and I saw that it was posted by a Riot employee. So my first thought was, did a Riot employee just leak Braum out of spite or something? But then I looked it up, and of course I saw that it was revealed officially. So I did see the concept art. Let me get my audio back on here since I was yapping for so long. I think it's funny it's starting with Alawi as well, because Braum and Alawi kind of have a romantic thing going on, at least in the RPG. That's a great intro. I want to see the shield again. Just basing it on memory, I don't really notice any differences with the shield, except for maybe the fact that it's a little bit flatter now. And I'm thinking of the concept art as well, because right here you're looking at it straight from the front, so you can't tell how flat it is. But I remember in the concept art, it looked a little flatter. And I'm thinking maybe it's because with it being a fighting game, you're going to be seeing profile views a lot. And if he does have a stance like Tsurugi, in which case... or a stance like Tsurugi in which he plants the shield, you're going to be seeing the shield from the profile view, and you wouldn't want it to be super thick, right? You would want it to be relatively flat. Whereas in League of Legends, you don't ever see the character from that perspective, so you can afford to have the shield be a bit thicker with the horns sticking out. But I wouldn't be surprised if there were some other design changes as well that I'm just not noticing. Also, I like that you can actually see in this game that the shield is in fact a door. Because, you know, with all of these different camera angles in this game, at least with these cinematics, you can see this side of the shield, and you can see that this is clearly a door. Whereas in the League of Legends game, and even in the RPG, you don't ever really get to see the shield from the back like this. So some people might not even know that the shield is a door just by looking at the character, right? Okay, so that was his first assist. Huh, so the assist is a guard point, but he's able to tag in immediately and punish Darius. So even though it's a guard point, you can kind of just treat it like a parry. That's interesting. Having to fight somebody with Braum on the assist is going to completely change the way in which you approach offense then, right? I'm trying to notice... Oh, okay, that's like some kind of... It's hard to see what's going on with this attack here. But Darius's shoulders are so wide, I think that's obscuring it a bit. So this is the tag, and then, yeah, that's the attack. He's swiping the shield, which hits Darius, and then comboing into what looks like an overhead. Man, that's it's pretty much Juggernaut's move from Marvel vs. Capcom. And I'm always a fan of that type of move, like the Superman punch, but punching it into the ground. Really good smear frames here as well. I think also they played around with Braum's proportions a little bit in this game, just because of, you know, the characters taking up much more of the screen space. Because Braum's legs look much leaner here than I remember. I'm used to him being way chunkier. And I think the idea was to maybe put more focus on his upper body strength. And one way in which you can do that is to just make a character's legs leaner. I think, again, it might be that he's normally wearing more armor, because normally he would have some waist armor here in addition to the gauntlet. And with all of that waist armor being gone, you know, he looks a bit leaner on his lower half, which brings more attention to the upper body strength, which does make a lot of sense for this kind of character design. Dude, he has the taunt. He has the push-up taunt as a move. That's great. So is that... You think that's just a crouching attack, or do you think it's a stance like a Blanca coward crouch? Because just looking at this, I would think maybe it's a crouching attack, but he has to like go into a unique animation of going onto his knees and then leaning down for the push-up. So I don't think it's a normal crouching attack. It might be some kind of counter. Because he goes into this stance, and then Yasuo comes in, and I feel like Braum would be getting touched by this hitbox, but instead of getting hurt, it just hits Yasuo. Maybe it's like a reversal. Maybe it's like a DP, right? That would be interesting. A push-up, a one-finger push-up DP, that's great. And he gets a follow-up. I love air headbutts. These keyframes. I know the characters thus far have looked really good as well, but this is the first time I see one of my mains realized like this, you know? Also, this is a new stage. I didn't even notice. It's a Bilgewater stage, but outside near the shore. I'll go back and look at that later. And so he gets to hit confirm into this, unless it's automatic. It might be automatic. Into I don't know, maybe it's not automatic because it goes into the a launcher, or it is a launcher and it goes into a jump. I love air headbutt moves. Zangief has it. You know, Hagar has it. Jin Saotome has it. I always love headbutts. That spikes. Does it not? It didn't spike. That looked like it was going to spike, but it didn't. I love this. This must be a spike. Yasuo stays on it, yeah. I love how they chose to animate him. Get the super afterwards. Also, if this is his theme, I love how it sounds. But I could also see it maybe being a theme for this stage, since it sounds a little pirate metal-y. But they probably would just be using his theme, right? I'm thinking it's his theme. It sounds a little too, I feel like it sounds a little too optimistic to be this stage theme. This stage is kind of dark. I would expect the stage to be a bit heavier or gloomier. But either way, the track sounds great. I think this might be my favorite track so far as well. And that's not just the bias of it being conflated and associated with Braum. I think a lot of the other tracks so far kind of sounds like, doesn't sound bad, but it just kind of sounds like gamer music, you know what I mean? Whereas this sounds much more unique. Let's see the super. So I know that this looks like an actual proper uppercut, but it's part of the super animation, right? But for some reason, this specifically looks familiar to me, and I'm wondering if he has a move that looks like this in the RPG that I'm forgetting. You know what? I actually just realized what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Tsurugi's uppercut from Under Night. Yeah, the uppercut with the shield, that's what I'm thinking of. Dude, the cadence of the super with the sound effects It's not even that cinematic of a super, but I feel like this has more impact than any of the other supers we've seen so far. Even more than Alawi's super in which she plunges you down to Nagakaboros. Because even though that one looks really cool, I feel like it doesn't have as much impact. And I think it's because you get to have those really loud, bassy, crackling sounds of the ice. And it also looks as if his shield stays frozen here, so I wonder if it gives him some kind of install. I think it does. Oh, that looks very much like a Tsurugi move. Tsurugi also has a move in which he can surf on the shield, so I think this is where those Tsurugi similarities are starting to show themselves. I don't know necessarily if they were inspired by Tsurugi because it was recently new, and surely they would have already been planning Braum for this game before Tsurugi was even playable. But, you know, they still could have gone in and maybe added some moves. Or it could just be a coincidence, because if you're thinking of how to make a moveset for a shield character, you know, two different people are probably going to come to some similar conclusions. That's great, you get full corner carry. That seems pretty good. The Boros. I'll have to see those, so this must be his taunt, right? I'm glad they include the Boros somehow. Dude, I've been looking at so many references of these kind of bodybuilder poses lately because of the Street Fighter 6 art contest. One of my entries, the pixel art Zangief I made, the pose is kind of similar to this type of pose. So I looked at so many references, so I just wanted to specifically look at this one since I have so many references in my recent memory here. Yeah, they definitely played with his proportions a bit. They definitely made his legs longer and leaner to exaggerate his upper body strength. And I think that they also made his head a bit smaller, which is a good trick to make somebody seem bigger in general. Makes their upper body seem a lot bigger if you just make their head a little smaller. But of course, if you look at his head, it's the same size as Yasuo. So really, you could just say that they made his body bigger. But in comparison, it makes his head look smaller, right? So that's, that's like charging star. It has a bit of a startup. So maybe you can't do it on reaction against projectiles. Let me see, when does he start this? When does Echo throw this? Is there like a bit of a freeze when Echo throws that? So I wonder if during this, does he automatically throw that when he, that is what the animation is for, right? Throwing this. So I guess you have, you could just buffer the input during this little cinematic. So maybe Echo just can't ever really do this against Braum, but I'm thinking of other characters with normal projectiles that won't be telegraphed with an animation like that. I wonder if Braum could actually plow through it on reaction, and I'm thinking it's probably designed where you have to do it on a read or be really good at reacting, or you have to be like far away, right? Because you can see there is definitely a telegraph here. So he's able to react, and he's probably already buffering, but let's just pretend that this is a character with a normal projectile, and you see 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frame. Now Braum is going into this. Nobody on planet Earth is going to be reacting to something in 3 frames. Human reaction time is usually around like 12, 13, 14 frames. So let's look how close this is with him doing it 3 frames. When does this look as if it becomes active? Okay, it becomes active when the red appears because the red is the super armor, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, look how close that is. That is not going to be, you know, if this were a regular projectile going at the same speed, this would not be reactable, so you have to make hard reads here, which is good. Oh! He gets a super off that from that far away. And this isn't even directly hitting. And these animations are great. It's really cool seeing how sometimes he lets go of the shield to throw it or something, but then he's able to catch it again. So this is his ult from the game, by the way, for anyone that hasn't played the actual League of Legends game. So I wonder if this, like, I wonder if this does extra damage or if it triggers some kind of other animation if you hit directly with the shield. Because again, you're only hitting with the ice spire part of this. The squat taunt. I'm pretty sure that's one of his taunts, doing the squats. You could gaslight me into thinking that was one of his taunts from the base game. I normally spam his push-up taunt, though. Or the one, oh, I'm thinking of one where he lays on his back and he sort of kicks the shield to spin it. What is that even called? He juggles it with his feet? I don't know how you would describe that. Oh, this is totally Tsurugi. So this stance might look OP to people that aren't familiar with fighting games, seeing it guard point through everything Ari's throwing out here, but it probably loses to a certain type of attack. So, for example, in Under Night, Tsurugi's stance can get beaten by lows. So if Ari were to throw out a low here, I wouldn't be surprised if that goes through Braum's shield. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think you could also throw Tsurugi out of the shield. So you could probably throw Braum or hit him with a low here. But something that's crazy is that he's actually inching forward here, and Tsurugi's not able to do that in Under Night. He has an option in which he's able to sort of like do a dash forward with the shield, but he's not able to just slowly inch forward like this and steal screen space as the shield is up. When Tsurugi dashes forward, it's a bit more of a commitment. If the opponent calls it out or waits for it, they can kind of punish it. But in this case, it doesn't really look as if you can punish Braum walking forward. Also, I want to pay attention to his footwork here. Wow, you only get to see one cycle of it, but shout out to the animators of actually having him do more or less the proper footwork of how you're supposed to walk when you have your body turned like this. That's really cool. Really small thing, but that's the kind of thing I pay attention to, just being obsessed about martial arts stuff. So that's his Q. Right there, that's his skill shot from League of Legends. And does he get a freeze? He does. That's cool that they're actually caught in a bunch of ice instead of it being like Mortal Kombat, in which the character model just turns blue. You know what I mean? When Sub-Zero freezes somebody in Mortal Kombat, their whole character model just turns light blue instead of seeing them actually get caught in a bunch of ice like this. I much prefer this. Well, I'm sure you could have gotten a bigger combo than that, Braum. Unless it's just some kind of automatic follow-up. But I doubt they would go out of their way to have the opponent frozen if you couldn't, you know, do whatever you wanted afterwards. This is probably just for the trailer. Oh, he gets the buff from it, though. Okay, I think I see what's happening. Oh, he already has the buff. Did we see when he got this? He already has it here. I was going to say maybe he gets the buff onto his shield if he hits them when they have ice, right? So maybe you can basically break the ice, break a frozen enemy in order to get the ice on the shield, but it's already on here. So, so far, the only thing we've seen to put the buff on the shield was that one super, right? The first one they showed off. Was that? Okay, it's some kind of super. At first, I thought this was like a whiffed throw animation or something, and I thought, why would you put this in the trailer? But this is some kind of super. Let's see. They got the Pora with the hammer. That's an unexpected super. So this is an actual combo because... Actually, wait. What's hitting her? She blocks that. She's going into a recoil animation here. Maybe his yell has a bit of a hitbox to it when he's yelling for the Poro. Yeah, you can see some wind effects here, as if this has a hitbox. That's really strange looking. Maybe that's why they added these little yellow markers to indicate that there's a bit of a hitbox here. I feel like people might complain about getting hit by this, and they might want to make this a bit more readable in terms of where the hitbox is. I wouldn't have a problem with it playing Braum, but I could see this potentially being a readability issue fighting against him. So I wouldn't be surprised if they changed that. That's my one critique so far. Okay, let's see this full super. The high five. It's great. Oh, the Poro cookies. How many supers are we seeing? We've seen 3 supers already, right? Maybe the first one wasn't a super? No, that has to be a super. That has to be, right? That has to be a level 1 or something. You wouldn't have that many cinematic camera angles. Yeah, you can even see the super flash right there. So that was 1 super. This is another... Wait a minute. That's not the same startup, right? Yeah, that's not the same startup. I was wondering maybe it was the same super, but 1 hit with the shield, so you got a different animation. But no, they're different. I don't remember how many supers each character gets in this game. But for some reason, I was just assuming that it was like 3 each. So that's crazy we're seeing 4. Well, maybe this isn't a super. But he high-fives the Poro. That has to be a super, right? Maybe it's not. Wow. I love how they incorporated the Poros into the moveset, right? And I was not expecting the cookies either. That's so much stuff from the source material that they were able to put in. See the full animation play out. It's a raging demon. It's a raging demon with the Poros. Why does that look like it's actually a hit? You think it's a taunt that does damage, that does 1 point of damage? Maybe. Okay, this is the raging demon. This looks like an outro, like a windscreen. I don't know why it would show this. This looks like a finish her type of situation, right? I don't know what that would be.
Braum is a nice guy, unless you make trouble.
Well, that is so much better than what I was expecting, though. And I was already expecting something that looked pretty good in terms of the animations and everything. But I was actually really kind of blown away by how above and beyond they went with incorporating things that weren't even moves, like his taunts, right? Incorporating his taunts as part of his moveset and incorporating the Poros and incorporating the cookies and all of that. So he is definitely going to be my main. I'm assuming that he's going to be playable in the alpha test, because why else would you show him? Why else would you show him right before the alpha test becomes playable? So I will definitely be maining him. Of course, it's going to be 2v2, so I'm going to have to find a good partner for him. So I'll probably just play him with whoever seems to be a good partner. But even once the game comes out, I'm thinking very high chance he's going to be my main when the game comes out. I think the only two characters that could potentially bump him out from being my permanent main would be Set or Blitzcrank, just because Set or Blitzcrank would be the premier grapplers, right? Set would be an awesome grappler. Blitzcrank would have to be a grappler. He would be a bit harder to put into the game. But even if I end up playing Set or Blitzcrank, I could play them with Braum potentially. The only reason I say that I might prefer Set or Blitzcrank over Braum is because I like playing grapplers. And even though Braum is definitely a big body character here, his whole stick is the shield with the guard points. So it makes sense that they didn't want to make his kit too loaded by giving him command grabs as well. Plus, it wouldn't make very much sense to make him a command grabber. It wouldn't make much sense to make him a grappler, considering he has to pretty much always have at least one hand holding the shield. So it would be kind of weird if he command grabbed you with his other hand, just a single hand, right? Because typically grapplers would want both of their hands free, right? So I think they did a pretty bang-on job